Freedom, a word that holds an immeasurable amount of power with the United States and its citizens. Today, the country that allegedly holds freedom to the highest degree is also the one with the largest number of incarcerated citizens per capita. A glaring 2.2 million and growing are imprisoned in the United States of America, and their reasons for imprisonment are extensive. For-profit prisons in America are a driving force behind our large incarceration numbers. That is why we must act today and put an end to the use of them and work to dismantle the larger prison industrial complex. Well, what exactly is the prison industrial complex?
The prison industrial complex is a system situated at the intersection of government and private interests. It uses prisons as a solution to social, political, and economic problems. It includes human rights violations, the death penalty, slave labor, policing, courts, the media, political prisoners, and the elimination of dissent.
Prisons benefit from high levels of incarceration because each prisoner that they get, they obviously get the contract for that prisoner from the state, and then they make more money. Often have lobbyists that work to increase sentences for crimes, especially among populations of people of color, where they end up being sentenced to prison instead of, say, community service or probation or some type of work release program, and then that guarantees the cash flow for the company running the prison. There have been reports which suggest some privatized prisons actually use prisoners and others to create situations which lead to additional sentencing of prisoners. So they may create a fight which leads to then the person who was set up, if you will, and this sounds such a outrageous thing, but the reports show that that allows them then to sentence more once the courts agree, and then that person stays longer, which generates more revenue for the prison. Bankruptcy or something else happening, many privatized prisons looking online are bailed out by the governments, whether local, state, or federal, which seems to be somewhat of a lame thing when you think about a privatized prison is there to save taxpayers' money so that the efficiencies are supposedly greater than public government run. So if they can't survive on their own as a prison, then they shouldn't need government handouts if they believe they're already better than the public run prisons. Well, the courts have said as long as they honor the constitutional rights of the individual sentenced, they're as adept and effective as long as, again, the ethics and the, if you would, corporate principles are followed. But again, we've seen many examples where that's not the case, including where one judge in Pennsylvania, over $1 million in bribes from privatized prisons to send young people to prison for things that they would have normally been discharged from, put on community service or probation, instead going to prison, causing huge issues for their lives forever. We know they often do from the studies, but it's difficult to prove because the retribution can be great. So there need to be mechanisms in place if we're going to use privatized prisons, just as the public prisons, where there are safety mechanisms, independent commissions like we use for human rights observations, where prisoners can talk directly with members of the commission without fear of retaliation or being recorded. But at the very bottom line, it needs to be just because you're a human that's made a mistake, it doesn't mean that you lose your human dignity forever or your freedom of movement forever. And in the meantime, while you pay your debt to society, you should be able to live a life that at least honors your constitutional and human principles.
Most politicians today will not mention anything about private prisons because it fills up their pockets with insane amounts of cash. There are companies in this world that want you to be imprisoned so they can make a huge profit. These businesses spent over $45 million in lobbying to make sure you get sent to their prisons. They are so good at this that there was a 37% increase of private prisoners between 2002 through 2009. private prisons are currently outpacing state and federally funded prisons. One of the 3 largest private prison corporations, Corizon, makes $1.4 billion a year, providing healthcare in over 530 correctional facilities in 28 states. Another one, CCA, Corrections Corporation of America, who issued approximately 117 million shares of stock with a market cap of $4.05 billion. And finally, GEO, had issued around 75 million shares of stock with a market cap of $2.67 billion.
This industry holds strong bonds to almost every aspect of the political arena, from regional positions to the presidential race. That is why we must act together to dismantle a system that benefits off the imprisonment of citizens in such a corrupt way. If we stay silent, we're only implicit in the actions of corporations that benefit from those paying their debt to society. We're implicit in the actions of this complex as its corruption bleeds into the background of our political offices. We can no longer stay silent. We must act now.
We're protesting against GEO Group over here, second largest private prison provider in the country, incarcerating millions of our people for profit. We're here to make sure they know we don't want them in our backyard.